Your saliva begins to boil on your tongue. The cause is not heat. The cause is the absence of pressure. And at the moment pressure reaches zero, the boiling point of water falls to the temperature of your own body. That is the first sensation documented from vacuum exposure in a living human being. Bubbles on the tongue. You have approximately 9 to 14 seconds of consciousness remaining from that point. The mechanism is called ebullism. It occurs when ambient pressure drops below 47 millimeters of mercury, a threshold defined by the physician Harry George Armstrong in the 1930s and called the Armstrong limit. Below that line, every fluid in your body exists in an environment where liquid water is thermodynamically unstable. And the ending of this, what the body becomes when the mechanism runs to completion, is not the part that closes the way you would want it to. 90 years of cinema gave you the same version of this death. The astronaut tumbles away from the ship. The flesh turns rigid and blue in seconds. A clean, dramatic silhouette against the stars. It is a useful image. It is anatomically wrong. The physics produces something different, something slower and far more specific. And it has left a documentary record in sealed chambers and accident reports and the flight logs of spacecraft that came apart at the wrong moment. The sequence begins with decompression. When a spacesuit fails, when an airlock opens, when a hull is breached, the pressurized atmosphere around the body vanishes in milliseconds. The first error, if you commit it, is to hold your breath. At sea level, your lungs hold air at approximately 760 millimeters of mercury. In vacuum, external pressure drops to zero. When the glottis closes against that differential, the gas inside the lungs expands against tissue that cannot contain it. Pulmonary barotrauma. The lung tissue tears. On Earth, with immediate medical intervention, this is survivable. In open space, there is no immediate medical intervention. The correct response, which the body resists on instinct, is to exhale before the pressure drops. To deliberately release the air you are holding. Assuming you exhale, or assuming the decompression is rapid enough that the body does not manage to resist it, you have approximately 9 to 14 seconds. That figure comes from documented human exposure. In 1966, a NASA research technician named Jim LeBlanc was pressure testing a spacesuit inside a vacuum chamber at the Johnson Space Center when his suit's air supply hose disconnected. The chamber had already been evacuated to near vacuum conditions. LeBlanc lost consciousness in approximately 14 seconds. He reported one sensation in the interval before consciousness ended. The saliva on his tongue had started to boil. The chamber was repressurized. LeBlanc survived with no permanent injury. He is one of a very small number of people who have experienced near vacuum exposure and come back to describe it. The 9 to 14 second window exists because of the oxygen already in your bloodstream. The brain does not stop functioning the instant new oxygen stops arriving. It uses what is already dissolved in the blood and loaded in the alveoli. When that reserve is exhausted, consciousness ends. The physiology is more specific than simple oxygen depletion. At near zero external pressure, the alveolar gas that would normally exchange oxygen into the blood begins moving in the opposite direction. The pressure differential drives oxygen out of the bloodstream and toward the lungs, which are now at a pressure that demands gas move outward. The blood deoxygenates rapidly. 14 seconds. That is the documented outer limit. The figure is not a range designed to reassure you. It is the measurement.
That was only the first phase of the mechanism. The second phase takes longer, and it does not require you to still be present. While you are unconscious, the body continues processing. At pressures below the Armstrong limit, the dissolved gases in your blood begin to leave solution. Primarily nitrogen, the gas that makes up roughly 78% of the air you breathe at sea level. Also oxygen, carbon dioxide, and water vapor. They form bubbles in the blood vessels, in the joints, in the soft tissue of the organs. This is the same fundamental mechanism as decompression sickness, the condition that injures divers who ascend from depth too quickly. When a diver ascends slowly,
Dissolved nitrogen comes out of solution gradually and is exhaled through the lungs. When pressure drops too fast, nitrogen forms bubbles before it can be exhaled. Those bubbles block circulation, damage joints, and in severe cases reach the brain and spinal cord. Vacuum exposure does not compare to a rapid ascent on any useful scale. The pressure drop is instantaneous. Every dissolved gas leaves solution simultaneously. The process that takes minutes in a rapid ascent from depth takes seconds in vacuum. The body swells. This is the part that cinema has not prepared you for. Your body, in vacuum, does not retain its shape. The gas forming beneath the skin, in the subcutaneous tissue, causes visible expansion throughout the body. Animal subjects in NASA vacuum chamber experiments, conducted in the early 1960s, swelled to approximately double their normal volume before repressurization. The skin does not rupture at that stage. Skin is elastic tissue. It stretches to accommodate gas formation. The form that emerges from vacuum exposure is not the form that entered it. The chamber records document this. That is not an approximation. The eyes present a related effect. The tear film, the thin layer of moisture coating the surface of the cornea, undergoes localized ebullism at sub-Armstrong pressures. This would not cause immediate blindness. It is visible. It would be perceived if consciousness were present. Consciousness is not present. The circulatory system continues to operate. The heart has its own electrical system, the sinoatrial node, which generates impulses independent of central nervous system direction. The heart beats after the brain stops directing it. It moves blood through vessels now carrying gas emboli. The heart continues until the combination of emboli and sustained deoxygenation stops it. The time from unconsciousness to cardiac arrest under full vacuum exposure is approximately 90 seconds to 2 minutes. The animal data from 1960s chamber experiments and the biomechanical modeling of vacuum exposure converge on approximately that range. No human being has been in vacuum long enough, without rescue, to provide a direct data point on cardiac arrest timing. For a period in the early space program, some models estimated the window longer. The physiology, when tested, placed it shorter. Every aerospace medicine model that addressed the full sequence proved accurate in its core predictions. Every one of them. There are 3 things the physics of vacuum exposure does not produce, despite consistent representation to the contrary. The first concerns freezing. The temperature of the cosmic microwave background radiation, the ambient temperature of deep space, far from any star, is approximately 2.7 Kelvin, which is minus 270 degrees Celsius. That number appears in almost every discussion of the hazard of open space. What appears less often is the mechanism by which heat would leave your body. Heat transfers through 3 processes: conduction, convection, and radiation. Conduction requires physical contact with a cooler medium. Convection requires a fluid medium to carry heat away. In vacuum, neither medium exists. Heat can only leave a body through radiation, and at biological temperatures, around 37 degrees Celsius,
the rate of radiative heat loss is slow. In direct sunlight near Earth, solar irradiance reaches approximately 1,370 watts per square meter. The skin of an unprotected body in direct sunlight at low Earth orbit may actually warm. A body in vacuum does not freeze instantly. Cooling occurs over hours through radiation alone. Freezing is not what ends you in the first 2 minutes. The second misconception concerns explosion. Skin is elastic tissue. The swelling described above is the result of that elasticity at work. The skin stretches to accommodate gas formation. Violent rupture does not occur from the pressure differential alone at normal body temperature on the timescale of vacuum exposure. The third misconception is that the blood oils away. Ebullism is real. It occurs internally, in the bloodstream, in the tissue. The blood does not exit the body and vaporize. It remains inside, carrying gas emboli through a cardiovascular system that continues to function until it cannot. The process produces no visible hemorrhage from the outside. Every component of the body was processing this event according to its design. The design had simply never accounted for this environment.
If this channel has earned a subscription from you, subscribe now. We will be here when you come back. What follows is the part most people have not paused to consider. While all of that was occurring inside one human body, the vacuum surrounding it had not changed by a single unit of pressure. This is the feature of the cosmic scale that no individual mechanism communicates on its own. The universe does not register the event. The pressure remains zero. Whatever the body is doing, and whatever it becomes, does not alter the conditions around it by a measurable amount. On June 29, 1971, 3 Soviet cosmonauts returned to Earth from the orbital space station Salyut 1. They were Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. Their mission had been the first extended human habitation of an orbital station, 23 days in orbit. The Soyuz 11 descent module re-entered the atmosphere without anomaly. The parachutes deployed on schedule. The capsule landed in the steppes of Kazakhstan within meters of the predicted touchdown point. The recovery team opened the hatch and found all 3 cosmonauts in their couches. They appeared to be sleeping. They were not. Post-mortem examination established that all 3 men had died of decompression. A pressure equalization valve in the capsule, designed to open after re-entry to equalize cabin pressure with the surrounding atmosphere, had opened prematurely during the separation of the orbital module from the descent module at an altitude of approximately 168 kilometers. At that altitude, the surrounding atmosphere provides no useful pressure. The cabin pressure dropped to 0 in 112 seconds. Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev were not wearing pressure suits. The Soyuz 7KOKS configuration did not include suits for the return transit due to cabin space constraints. They had no protection. The physical record shows attempts to find the valve. Dobrovolsky was found with his seat harness partially unfastened. The valve was located in a position requiring a crew member to cross the cabin to reach it. The pressure loss rate, calculated from the valve specifications afterward, was fast enough that the crew would have lost consciousness in approximately 40 seconds. This is documented. The investigation records are public. The cosmonauts showed no external injuries, no visible trauma. The damage was entirely internal, entirely consistent with the mechanism already described in this video. They were the only human beings to die in space, above the Kármán line
at 100 kilometers altitude. Up to that point, every vacuum exposure incident in the program had occurred in a chamber with the option to repressurize. Soyuz 11 had no such option. The mechanism ran to completion. This is where the mechanism extends beyond the individual body. Return to the question planted at the beginning: what the body becomes when no one retrieves it. In the vacuum of low Earth orbit, a body undergoes desiccation through sublimation. At near zero pressure, liquid water cannot exist as a stable phase at biological temperatures. The moisture in the tissue converts directly from liquid to vapor and disperses. The process is slow by human standards, but faster than the biological decay that occurs on Earth, where bacteria, moisture, and oxygen all participate in decomposition. In vacuum, none of those processes function. The body does not decompose. It desiccates. The moisture leaves. What remains is a preserved structure, lighter than the original, chemically stable in the absence of oxygen, largely sterile. In low Earth orbit, at approximately 400 kilometers altitude, the residual atmosphere is thin but present. It produces a small drag force on orbiting objects. Over months to years, this drag degrades orbital velocity. Eventually, the orbit decays, and the object re-enters the denser atmosphere below. Re-entry at orbital velocity produces temperatures above 1,600 degrees Celsius on the leading surfaces. An object with no heat shield and no attitude control does not survive re-entry intact. At higher orbits, above approximately 700 kilometers, atmospheric drag becomes negligible on timescales of human civilization. An object at 800 kilometers would remain in orbit for centuries. At geostationary orbit, 35,786 kilometers above the equator, there is effectively no atmospheric drag. The orbit does not decay on any timescale relevant to the current lifetime of the Sun. In deep space, beyond
the gravitational influence of any planet, a body orbits the Sun. The desiccated structure, rotating slowly, drifting on the trajectory established at the moment of release, would continue on that orbit. The Sun will remain on the main sequence for approximately 5 billion more years. In that interval, no force that current physics allows would remove a body in a stable heliocentric orbit from that orbit. It would be present when the Sun expands into a red giant and its outer envelope extends beyond the orbit of Earth. At that point, the body would be consumed, and only then. The atmosphere separating you from this mechanism is approximately 100 kilometers thick. That is the distance between two nearby cities. A car covers it in slightly more than an hour on a highway. A commercial aircraft crosses it in under 7 minutes. The International Space Station, at orbital velocity, passes through 100 kilometers in approximately 22 seconds. 100 kilometers of accumulated gas. Built over 4.5 billion years of planetary outgassing, biological metabolism, and gravitational compression. That layer is what stands between the biochemistry of your body and the mechanism described here. The Armstrong limit, where ebullism begins, is crossed at approximately 19 kilometers altitude. 19 kilometers. The altitude reached by weather balloons. The cruising altitude of some high-altitude military aircraft. Without a pressure suit, the process begins there. Above 100 kilometers, the Kármán line, the pressure drops below any level that supports the aerospace definition of flight, and the environment becomes, by all practical measurement, vacuum. The vacuum extends from that boundary outward in every direction. The pressure in the interstellar medium, the space between star systems in a galaxy, is on the order of 10 to the power of -13 pascals. Standard atmospheric pressure at sea level is 101,325 pascals. The difference between those two numbers spans approximately 18 orders of magnitude. The pressure you require to survive is the exception. The rest of the observable universe, in almost every direction and at almost every distance, operates at the pressure the mechanism in this video requires to function. The 100-kilometer shell above you is, on cosmic timescales, temporary. Atmospheric escape removes gas from Earth's upper atmosphere continuously, on timescales of billions of years. The exception is not permanent. Your saliva began to boil on your tongue. That is what Jim LeBlanc reported from the inside of a vacuum chamber in 1966, in the 14 seconds before the vacuum took his consciousness. The chamber repressurized. He came back. The Soyuz 11 crew were found in their seats. They looked like they were sleeping. The valve they attempted to reach was documented. The time they had was documented. It was not enough. The body in the right orbit does not decompose. It desiccates and it remains. In a stable heliocentric orbit, it persists until the sun expands to consume it. The vacuum has not changed in any of this. It was present before the first atmosphere formed on any planet in this solar system. It will be present after the last atmosphere is stripped away. It does not register what happens inside it. The pressure is zero. The mechanism runs. The vacuum remains. Right now, 100 kilometers above you, the pressure is already below what your body requires. The real question is not how long a body survives in vacuum. The question the physics answers without being asked is what the body becomes afterward. Drifting in the silence the universe has always returned to by default. If this channel is worth subscribing to, subscribe. And leave a comment with the specific detail in this video that you were least prepared to learn was real.